Hello, facilitators. So I'm so happy that you've decided to help with our course. Okay. Now, I just want to make one thing really clear. Being a facilitator doesn't mean that you're going to be teaching, doesn't mean you're going to be doing a whole lot of extra work. What it actually means is you're going to be like a more active participant, kind of like the leader of the class, so to speak. Like when you have a classroom dynamic, the one person that tends to take a leadership role, that's kind of like what you're going to be doing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the course itself and tell you about each of the different parts in a little bit of detail, just so you have some knowledge going into the course so that when the other participants are in there, you kind of have a little bit of a head start. Okay. So here's our course on Moodle, and the first section here is just kind of information about the course, which I'll ask every participant to kind of go through because it's kind of important to kind of know what the course is about, what's expected of them, etc. Here we have announcements, if there's any announcements that are necessary, and a social forum for any chatting about basically anything at all. Okay, this one is also linked to the very first warm-up task, okay, which I'll talk about in a second. Next, we have this resource library. Now, many of us have actually been doing research on our own about, how to teach online, what's the best way, how to go about it, and things like that. And we might have come across things that are useful, and we might want to share them. And that's kind of what this is for. This is a link to a Word document where I've been kind of keeping track of resources that people have been kind of giving to me, saying this might be useful, and another person emailing me, this might be useful. And so I've been keeping track of that in there. So if you have something that you'd like to share, that's what this is for. Okay, just before the course starts, okay, now there are two requisites to get the certificate of participation for this training. And one is taking this course, and the second is having either attended or viewing the video of this webinar that we had with Dr. Norman Vaughn. Okay, so there's a link to that webinar there. Okay, so people will have to take a look at that, or if they've attended, then they can just skip that. Okay. And then we have the very first task, which is a warm-up task before the actual formal learning takes place. And this is kind of like an activity that you might do on the very first day of lesson, just to kind of get to know people, kind of get people warmed up, kind of building that, how would I say, building that social environment, let's say, okay, because learning is a social experience, and that's what we kind of aim towards in liberal arts, is kind of having that nice feeling of being together, and that's what this task is about. Okay. Now I will make this course available to the facilitators before the participants, so you can go around and poke around in there. But please don't do any of the work yet, because we want to wait till the course actually starts. So I'll make that available for you to kind of poke around and kind of take a look at, so you can kind of see the descriptions of each of those. Okay, here's our very first topic, which talks about approaches and frameworks. So this is the kind of theory, the pedagogy behind online learning. So if you've never, or if participants, if learners have never read anything about pedagogy of how to learn online, that sort of thing, that's what this section deals with. Okay, and in each section we have kind of an introduction, which is kind of like a lecture. We give a little bit of information, and you'll notice that this course isn't really us teaching you. It's not like us saying we know everything, this is how you go about things, but we do give a little bit of information to kind of start people thinking. Okay, and that's usually what the introduction of the section is about. Okay, and there's a video in there, so you can take a look at that. And then after that bit of information is where the learning really takes place. Okay, this is where people really put their thinking caps on, really start discussing, really start exchanging ideas, and talking about things, throwing things out there, saying what's good, bad, agreeing, disagreeing. And that's what these discussions are for. And you can see that every section will have discussions. Now, the course is organized so that all participants are grouped into their department. Okay, so there's the math department, there's the art history department, there's the business department, etc. Each participant will be discussing and learning with their department. Okay, if people want to take a look at other people's departments, what they're talking about, they can. It's just that they can't create discussion topics in other departments. They can only create discussion topics in their own department. This very first discussion here, US facilitators will actually start this one off. Okay, so whether you're in the math and science department or whether you're in the communication departments, you'll have to go in there and create the discussion to kind of start it off. And this will be the only one that you have to create. I think the other forum discussions, you don't have to be the first one, but this one you do get things started. And you can see that I've done it for the math and science department. Okay, so you can see group math and science, and I've just created math and science department activity 1.1 and 1.2. So if you're in the communications department, you'll just kind of go in there and create a topic, and you can name it the same thing, communications department activity 1.1 and 1.2. Okay, and that's there. If you're not actually in the communications department, you'll actually notice that this button doesn't appear. I'm an administrator in this course, so it appears for all of these ones for me. But for most people, if you're just a simple participant, if you go into another department, you'll be able to see the discussions, but you won't be able to create a topic in there. Okay. So please do that scary first lecture, that first discussion. Please be the first one to go in there and create that forum discussion topic for your department. Okay. The next topic is facilitating learning. So once we get past the learning theory, okay, what does it mean to learn? What are the different approaches and methodology? Once we kind of discuss that and kind of wrap our heads around that, then we kind of try to put that into practice, and we try to reflect on our own teaching. So what are the activities that we actually do to make people learn, that sort of thing? And here again, we have discussions regarding that. So taking theory and converting into how we can take that and how we can get people to learn. And again, there's discussions, introduction video. So you don't have to be the first. You can be the first if you want to create a topic, but you might want to hold off to see if anybody starts the discussion. And that's one thing about facilitating. If you see that people in your department haven't really started a discussion, then you either can email people and say, hey, we should get this discussion started, or you can start the discussion yourself and maybe message people and say, hey, I've just started the discussion, we should get on that, and just kind of keep people on track, let's say. Okay. The next part, developing online and blended practices. So this ties into the best practices. And what we were kind of thinking is, these best practices that we talk about aren't always applicable to every person. So a best practice that's applicable to somebody in math may not be applicable to somebody in social sciences or something like that. So this section deals with kind of like individualizing or personalizing best practices towards yourself or towards people who are like you. For example, people who in your department. So there's a discussion about that. And then we have a collaborative activity. So we wanted to make an activity where we can kind of experience what it's like to collaborate online. And that's what this wiki is. So you can go in there and you can build this wiki together with your department. Okay. And then the last topic is rethinking assessment. So there's been a lot of discussion going on about, how am I going to assess people, cheating, all those sorts of things. So we made a section that will enable us to kind of reflect and kind of discuss about assessment. How are we going to go about it? Are there alternatives? Okay, so maybe testing is not the only way to assess. What's an alternative? What are things we can do? So there's some discussion about that. Again, introduction video and then a discussion. And then there's an optional activity, and we were thinking that with the assessment, sometimes people find it useful to have a grading rubric. And so there's this optional activity, and just for time's sake, we made this optional. And it's also a chance for people to experience a shared folder in OneDrive. So that's what these are. These are shared folders created in OneDrive, and people can experience sharing documents together. So that's what this activity is for. Okay, and then last, when we've gone over all the topics, is the final exam. Well, as you can see from the smiley face, it's not a real exam, but it kind of gives you kind of a conclusion to a course. So the premises of this training course is to give people kind of like a feel of what it is like to be a student. And as a student, after a course, there's the final assessment or final exam, that sort of thing. So there's two activities that are required here, and these two activities are required to consider the course as complete. Okay, nobody is actually going to be graded on these things because we feel like we're in no position to grade other colleagues. So it's not like I can give a grade to another professor or something like that. So these are activities that you should do. You won't actually get a grade, but you can self-assess yourself, okay? And that's what this is kind of for. If you attended the webinar, Dr. Vaughn said sometimes self-assessment can be equally valid. So people kind of reflect on, okay, how well did I actually do that action plan? Did I actually spend time on it? Did I work on these discussions? Did I participate as much as I could? That sort of thing. And again, this won't be graded. If you want, you can just lie on it. That doesn't really matter. That's not really the point. The point is to kind of let people see what it's like to kind of self-assess yourself and kind of do this concluding activities in a course. Okay, so that's just to give you an idea of what this course is all about. Of course, like I said, I'll make this available to you so you can poke around just to get an idea, read the descriptions if you want. And like I said, again, you are not meant to be the experts of this course. What you're supposed to be is an active participant, a leader, keeping people on track. If the discussion digresses, you're the one that should be say, hey guys, let's bring it back over here. We're kind of talking about the wrong thing. Or even say, oh, have we thought about this? That sort of thing. Okay, so yeah, I hope things go smoothly, which yeah, I don't see why they won't. Okay, so if you have any questions, we're available.